Hi, good afternoon. Good morning to some of you. My name is Heidi Tillman, and I am going to be hosting today's webinar on planning and designing signage for recreational trails. We're just going to wait a few moments to see if others will be joining, and then we'll continue on. In the meantime, I just want to make mention, a few housekeeping notes, that this is being recorded for future review. Closed caption is available. You have to trigger that on your side in your settings. You are welcome to submit any Q&A as we're going through the webinar, and we will do our best to answer them along the time we're doing the webinar. But should we run over or run out of time, we will be taking all the questions, answering them, and sending them to you via email after the fact. And if there are any questions after, there is information on how to contact me and my team at the end of the webinar to answer any questions signage related, whether it be for TCT or for your trail or kind of general signage questions in general. All right, Raymond, we'll move on to the next slide. We have 85 here. All right. Again, good day to all. My name is Heidi Tillman. I am the National Manager of Infrastructure and Signage for the Trans-Canada Trail. As many of you know, that the Trans-Canada Trail is a network of trail sections across Canada that go from coast to coast to coast. My team takes care of all the trail projects and signage projects across the country, funding those that are in need of assistance throughout the trail. For myself, I am in the signage business for over 30 years. I have been awarded Signs of the Times Magazine's Women of Signage Award in 2021. And I also have done work with different organizations such as Loblaws, Rio Tinto Alcan, and Shell International, being a project manager for those projects as they develop new construction across the country. And I am residing in Dundas, Ontario with my family. So in regards to signage, as you plan your signage across your trail, the one thing I want to make mention is when we see requests for signage funding, we find that many groups do not submit signage plans in general. They have an idea of what they'd like to do, but unfortunately, some of them do not have a comprehensive look of what every aspect of signage that they need to have on the trail. And that's not uncommon. Usually signage is an afterthought. It is, we find that we are the last at the party. We are, oh my gosh, I need a sign aspect. So the one thing I do want to recommend is when you are planning your trail or any kind of building, such as anything at all, if you're building a supermarket or a factory, you know, signage tends to be the first at the party as part of the planning, and we tend to be the last of the party when we show up and we actually install the signs at the end. But with signage, signage is an important aspect of any kind of construction, and more importantly, today we're talking about trail, and every sign tells a story. So a critical part of the operation of sign, the quality of the sign, the trail system, it is a high visibility representation of that quality. It provides exposure to the trail to attract more users. It educates the user and gives reassurance. It controls usage and creates more environmentally friendly experience. And it's the easiest way to ensure a positive user experience. And it's the quickest way to ensure and increase trail identity and boost public support. So as you plan your trail signage, some key considerations of what you're looking for when you're planning is what type of trail are you planning for? And majority of what we have in Canada is in either an urban trail, so that's within the cities, or outback trail, which would have limited signage as a result of just the nature of the trail that you're walking upon. Who is the user of the trail? That usually dictates then the height of the signage. So cyclist, hiker, equestrian, ATVers, or is there a mixed use? How are the signs being used or viewed, sorry? The distance for which you're seeing the sign, the height in which the viewer will be seeing the sign, the speed in which the viewer will be seeing the sign, and the angle. There are also other considerations such as lighting. There's also the existing of signage families. So if you have an existing trail that has been there forever, but you've upgraded it because you've widened it, you find an increase of traffic, you have a need to have a change in signage elements because bylaws have changed. So your signage family will need to expand because of risk management. And also to accessibility conditions. Are you welcoming people with disabilities, people in wheelchairs, visual, autism, and so forth? So all signage has to be reflective of those needs. So as a result of when you're planning for a trail signage, one thing we do have is somewhat of a checklist. We find that wayfinding is probably the first and foremost. Wayfinding excellence tends to assure that people traveling along the trail gets reassurance, they don't get lost, which is probably the biggest factor. A trailhead at the beginning or at any major entrance into the trail section is very important. These things usually inform the traveler of any kind of obstacles or route if you have mapping. Regulatory, safety, or cautionary signs. This is important if you have elements on your trail that need to be highlighted while traveling. Interpretive signs, which then educate and inform travelers as they're going along the trail. Kilometer or mile markers. Acknowledgement signs. And of course, there's always miscellaneous signs that you need as you go through the trail. So wayfinder, also known as guidance signs. They're any sign types that give direction to those that are reading it. It's necessary to ensure that the user finds their destination with minimal stress. And good wayfinding provides practical information without the user needing to read the sign. So in the case of TCT, we have a very graphic logo now with very graphic arrows depicting direction. At TCT, we do find that the average cost is between $500 and $500 per kilometer. And this is dictated on whether there's existing infrastructure in place, such as poles, trees, and so forth, and what exactly you're wanting to identify as you're going through the trail sections to identify your way through the trail. Some people just want to mark onto existing trees, but then some people have a need to have more elaborate. They may have more trail branding that they want to identify with. They may have multiple stakeholders that they want to identify. And so that's the reason in the cost increase. Another aspect that you may see on trail sections, and there are a few on the TCT, is that people often use blazes. This is first adapted in the early 70s, where people would mark onto trail tree lines and so forth, different rectangular shapes to then navigate users throughout the trail section. And you see by the graphic on the right-hand side, the different meanings to the different demographics of the trail icons. So if you are interested in doing this, this is a great inexpensive way of having wayfinder across your trail. The only downfall to this is unfortunately that trees on the trail do grow. So this is a maintenance issue that has to be addressed usually within first 2 or 3 years of doing so. Another aspect that you'll see for wayfinding is called Carns. These are usually piles of stones that indicate direction. They do have different meanings. They're very popular in the Arctic region of North America because there's no trees or there's no means of installing signage into the ground. Unfortunately, due to vandalism and so forth, wildlife interference and then just weather, these often then get damaged or knocked down. So navigation with them isn't a very reliable way of getting through the trail. So we're going to now discuss trailheads and kiosk signage. And this is a sample of what we have on the Shortline Trail, in Tadamgoosh in Nova Scotia. So trailheads are installed at major waypoints and include large-scale signs with maps, trail use icons, GPS locations, and other permanent information that ensures safe travel. 911 and other emergency information should also be displayed on these types of signs. Mapping should be included with a very distinctive "you are here" point, a compass rose to show north, south, east, and west. And also the mapping should suggest a 5-kilometer reference and a 5+ kilometer reference, if applicable, if you have a very large scale trail section that you know that people will travel further than the "you are here" point. And additional regional information can be included if necessary, especially if you're trying to engage groups or engage travelers to visit local areas such as areas B&B or for food or for other kind of information such as bike repairs and so forth. Warning and hazards should be informed on these types of trailheads, and especially before departure. And also trails approaching international borders should be highlighted on mapping so that they don't get into trouble if they're crossing the border illegally. Trailheads are also called kiosks in different parts of Canada. Usually kiosk is a terminology that we use when there's a roof over top of the signage. Roofs are often included in trailhead signage. It obviously is a weather protective aspect when people are traveling, but it also acts as a UV protectant to the signage itself. In Canada, we also recommend that on trailhead signage that we have Indigenous land acknowledgements be included on such signs, and you can contact your local band office for this information. Designs should be in high contrast to ensure legibility for those with visual impairments, and design considerations for those with color blindness. So we do suggest a white with a dark background. Colors, if you can't see it when you squint on the screen when you design it, then you have your coloring wrong and you should step back and do something a little bit different. Historical and educational content can be included. However, less is more, and we do encourage additional QR codes to redirect those users to a website that allows them to get more information or better mapping if the case may be. All signage should be designed in conjunction with current building codes and signage bylaws, and I do recommend that you contact your local municipality and talk to someone in building to find out any kind of signage limitations, size limitations, installation limitations, to assure that you don't install any type of signage without approval from them. And at TCT, we do see that there is a very range in signage funding requirements for trailheads, and the budget can range anywhere between $1,500 to $50,000, depending on the type of sign and the size of sign that you require. And this is obviously based on current costs, and those are fluctuating obviously due to current supply chain issues and the cost of aluminum going up. regulatory, safety, and cautionary signage. So the sample that I give is a very poor example of how to display your cautions across the trail. It is best to give some thought to how you want to educate your traveler on how best to let them know that there is issues or any kind of hazards along the trail. It is best to refer to our Ministry of Transportation regulatory traffic signs. They tend to have figured out all these cautions in advance. They do have some trail references as well. And they also have ISO standards. So with that, those icons that you see in Ministry of Transportation are seen across the world. So if you do have an international traveler, that the icon will speak to them and let them know of the caution before they have to read any kind of content below. We do believe that depicting whatever should not be done as important as what can be done on the trail. This is a risk management aspect, and it does let others know about safety and cautionary issues to avoid liability. And we do very much encourage any kind of risk management audit. And for that, if you are part of the TCT, you can apply for funding to complete such an audit. So additional warning and sign considerations. This is a quick checklist of what you should be having. So obviously with trail visitors, you may have parking, and you should encourage your trail users to, not leave their valuables in the car, lock their car, etc. There, in recent years, obviously with COVID, we've seen an abundance of misuse of parking. This is important, especially if people are parking on private lands that should not be touched or encroached. Wildlife is another aspect. Any kind of warnings regarding hunting and so forth. Floral, especially if you have issues with poison ivy or endangered species. Water, that people are to bring drinking water. We often hear of complaints and rescue aspects where people went off on the trail, got lost, and did not have enough water with them. Any kind of trespassing notices, pack in and pack out has been very popular in the last few years. Weather warnings, especially for those on that can encounter wild weather rather quickly, and detours with obviously weather, but also fallen trees, mudslides, and construction. We do encourage that trail use icons be used, since we do have international travelers visiting to Canada, and I'm sure if anyone's on here from other areas that you have the same issue, that nonverbal icons be used. So we educate the traveler to travel across the trail without any issues, and they know exactly what they can and cannot do. Interpretive signage. For TCT, we do encourage these across the country. They are a great way to inform and educate, and it adds a little bit of a highlight to all of the trail encounters. There is usually much historical information. There's floral and fauna information, and these are usually rich with graphics and photos, and also may also include a QR code to then expand information that people may want to know in either a second or third language. But with that, the content should be clear and easy to read. And on average, the budget is between $250 for a simple panel onto existing pole structure, but they can go up to $5,000 depending on content, translations, and further infrastructure that needs to be used for foundations. Mile and kilometer markers are providing distance information along the trail that is important, especially in urban areas, as well as remote backcountry. These are often used too in case of a 911 situation. They will ask you if you have a kilometer or mile marker, and that will then help them as well find you in case of emergency. With this, they can be very small, as in case of this illustration here, but they can also be incorporated into your wayfinding information. A part of all trail sections is, like TCT, we are a not-for-profit, so we do seek donations from our sponsors, local travelers, and volunteers. And this way, we like to acknowledge our various volunteers and donations in the form of signage. And we also encourage that if you are planning to do so, that you plan this type of signage to be less obtrusive on the trail. So in this case here, that is a nice, formal, very structured sign, and it usually is displayed at the beginning of the trail. Sign design. So a part of what we find is that a lot of information tends to be put onto a sign. It's like they want to put an essay on a sign, and unfortunately, less is more. There is a need for artistic talent and technical functionality, but at the end of the day, if you look at the sign and you're wondering what it says, then the sign hasn't done its job properly. We encourage that, again, color be very simple, gradated backgrounds, multiple colors, too many words, too much information to be reduced. These things can be consolated into a QR code. I do understand that, you know, for these nowadays with such large signage, with so much information, people can use their cell phones to take pictures to help navigate. But again, you know, the signage examples that we have here, you can see in the reference to the left-hand side, the average person is 5'6" to 6 feet tall. If you're dealing with someone in a wheelchair, their line of sight is 4'5". So to have information at the top of an 8-foot sign is useless, unless you're trying to navigate someone from a distance. But again, you would need to educate your traveler beforehand that this type of signage is available, what they're looking for, and that would be best communicated on a website or any kind of travel information that you already have. Accessibility. In Ontario, we already have bylaws in place that you have to adhere to various different signage bylaws for accessibility. I believe there are different aspects being implemented across the country, and I do know in the United States there already are aspects of accessibility standards. For us in Canada, we do see that audio interpretive panels, which is in the photo that you see, but there's also tactile graphics and maps being used, interactive panels, QR codes, as we've already mentioned. And we have also in Alberta, we have had installation of what we call smart beacons, which are self-voicing apps to such things as Blind Square, which will tell the user how to navigate the trail through their phone. We also are working with consultation with Access Now, CNIB, and the Rick Hansen Foundation to ensure good guidance that we design trails and signage to be accessible for all users across the trail. So how to plan the perfect slang plan. So what I mentioned before is that many larger trail sections should have what we call a sign family. And the graphic to the right does show a variation of what a sign family could look like, from wayfinder to trailheads to different traverse signage. And what we encourage is that you take your map and sit down and plan out where all this signage should go. Signage is a huge investment, and to get it right the first time is your best bet. We do encourage that you take GIS information, that you plan wayfinding at every major decision-making point, that you also encourage signage for any kind of amenities or points of interest, that we have, as mentioned, large-scale trailhead signs at any major entrances. And then obviously, as you're going through your plan, you will see that they'll have areas that you need to address all of your cautionary and warning signage. But then at the end of the day, to step back and make sure that you don't oversign. Some of the complaints that we do hear is that there's too much signage on the trail. It takes away from the naturalization of the trail, and we do encourage to, take away some of the signage that may not be needed, but then also be willing to put back signage when you hear feedback from your users that more is needed, especially in certain aspects in different areas. So for one of the examples that I want to give is a plan that we're working on in the KVR, which is Kettle Valley Rail Trail in BC. And this is their signage family that they are working on. This is a 270-kilometer trail, and it is currently estimated to cost between $70,000 and $80,000 to incorporate all of these signs into place, and that's in current dollars based on today's numbers. Design itself should range between $5,000 to $10,000 depending on who you are using, and you're more than welcome to use that to do the planning yourself. But should you reach out to a local organization, we do recommend a local engineer, landscape architect, or large-scale signage company to assist you with your planning. So signage materials and installation. Signage is a long-term investment, as mentioned, and we do at TCT recommend aluminum as the preferred materials. There are other different materials that can be used and may be recommended by your local sign manufacturer. There is composite, which is a plastic and aluminum material. It is very lightweight, it's very common. The one thing I do find with this is that in recent years, it tends to delaminate. It is easy to bend. In regards to woods and other plastics, wood itself will decompose over time, so you will be replacing it. And then plastic being what it is, it can break, especially after exposure to UV over time. You can use stone and other metals such as stainless steel, which would be recommended, though stainless steel tends to be very expensive and can be very heavy, especially if you're moving signage to remote trails. The one thing that we do recommend also too is that your fasteners be either galvanized or some type of weatherproof fasteners. It is important that you know that your sign is secure, because the last thing we want to hear is that someone is hurt by a sign falling or being damaged in any way or form. Large scale signs such as the trailheads, anything over 4 square feet should have a foundation. And we do again recommend you contacting your local municipality's building department to find out what is required in your area. Your local sign manufacturer should also have this information. But if you do not get that information, you're always welcome to reach back to TCT, and we can address that issue with you and direct you to the best people to speak to regarding your installation. And that concludes our webinar for today. And these are additional resources that you can go to. We have Parks Canada as one of our funders. Obviously, we get our federal funding from Parks Canada, and they have a very comprehensive signage guidelines, which includes all the icons and so forth that you will be needing. But TCT also has our own guidelines, and these are just best practices from an aspect of design and installation. But if you do have any questions, you are more than welcome to reach out to me to ask any kind of questions regarding signage, whether you're part of TCT or not. but we also have partners with Ontario Trails, Waterfront Trust, and America Trails has an extensive amount of library regarding signage resources for you. And I am welcoming any kind of questions. And here's my information to contact me, should you have any. All right, so I do see a question from Ellen regarding using what 3 words app for location in 911 situations. I have seen it that some cases that people are using 3 words. We have not seen it lately at TCT. So if it is something that is common in your area, I do recommend reaching to your local authorities to see if that's what they're encouraging, especially from your 911 first responders. Okay, and from Lucas in Red Deer, we've had a kiosk for TCT for a couple of years. It was switched to QR codes, yes. The mapping is still the same. We do update it on a regular basis. So if someone has an older Great Trail sign with a QR code, it does take you to the website currently. If you are having any issues with that, and I do not know if we are or not, but please reach out to me and let me know, and we'll have that corrected for you. From Graham, when should we add safety or cautionary signs? Is there a specific criteria or threshold? You should add safety and cautionary signs when you know you need them. I always say when you're doing your signage plan that you walk the trail as a user and as if you've never been there before. So it's important to anticipate any kind of question a user will have as you're traveling down the trail. So with that you are, if you think someone will fall off a cliff or you think someone will turn the wrong way, you need to address that. If it's regarding speed or any kind of new usage, especially those having e-bikes being added to the trail, if you are experiencing increased usage, you should have those items addressed. You should have speed limit signs added to the sign makeup. You should have any kind of detour signage if there's fallen trees. It isn't unusual to not catch a need, but having some way of having feedback is very, very important. So whether you have a website, Facebook page, take every comment as important and address it accordingly. Okay. So Ruth Ann, thank you for joining, even though you came in a little late. In those who are part of the TCT and have need for either new signage, funding requirements, guidelines on how to install our signage, we will be sending out our guidelines to all of our TCT members. But if you have a specific question, once you receive the guidelines, please feel free to reach out and contact myself, and I'll answer your question or call and make sure you get the information that you need and how to order, how to request funding, or just to have direction on who the best to talk to in your local municipality. Don Cook, is there funding available to upgrade local signage and maps? Yes, we do have. We have our applications open still regarding major infrastructure and signage. Signage does still have room in its budget to assist with any kind of projects this year. Major infrastructure, if you apply, they will be put into queue. We have closed any kind of major infrastructure funding at this moment, but should any funds become available, we will be in contact and discuss those. But chances are we will be reviewing them more so for the next fiscal, which would be for 2023. But in regards to this year, and you are considering rebranding, we do have funds available. And for those at TCT network, all of your wayfinding, your single logo wayfinding, and your arrows are given to you for free. We do require you to have a mapping of where all the signage will go. There is an application process. Again, please reach out and we'll send you the form. And whether you need to upgrade them or replace them, we do encourage that you do have good wayfinding throughout the network. And Stephanie, do you have signage recommendations for a floating trail system? So I'm guessing that this is on water, but Stephanie, if you want to reach out to me directly and I can assist you with your question, I'd be happy to do so. And other than that, if anyone does not have any other questions, you're welcome, Stephanie. So again, thank you everyone for joining us today. If you like, we are having this webinar again in French at 1 o'clock. Our VP Mathieu Roy will be presenting that. And again, if you'd like to have any more information, if you would like the guidelines, if you'd like any kind of application forms, please reach out and me and my team will be happy to assist you with any kind of signage information that you require. And with that said, I wish you all a great day and we'll see you on the trails. Take care.